Hi, I'm Rebecca Balcárcel with Writers on Writing. Let's hear from Alex Temblador, an award-winning novelist, contributor to anthologies, and journalist. What kinds of research do you do, and how do you
Mm.
incorporate that? When we say research, what does that even really mean in your work?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's three different major types of research that I do. So there's interviews. I'm not an expert in everything, and there are a lot of people who are experts in their fields, whether that's a tour guide or somebody who studies autism and the way it relates to literature or film. And so I love interviewing people. I like to hear things from their perspective. And a lot of times they explain things in a more understandable way that maybe I wouldn't get in a book or in an article or some journal that they have published a piece in. So interviews are very important to me, at least especially when it comes to um, my articles. I will include like their quotes and such to give credence because they are an expert and I am not. But I do include it in my books too. Like research can be very helpful to getting background information, to getting stories or anecdotes that can be part of the story as well. And then I think there's also online research, of course, that is going online, searching for articles, searching for journal, article or papers published in journals, searching social media sometimes. Um, and that can be for my books and or my articles. I don't, always have to talk to somebody to get feedback from other people or get statistics through online researching. But the bad thing about online searching research is that it can be hard to sometimes find the things that you need to find because Google can only find whatever you're asking it, right? So if you don't know what to search for, and sometimes I do know what to search for, I'm very good at online researching, but sometimes people do not include the right keywords that I would think would be included through a Google search. And so the only way I can find out that information sometimes is in a book. So I do read other books. If I'm writing a novel, I'll read other books to kind of get inspired or do a little bit of research on, for instance, I'm working on a book where I need to know about alternate worlds. And like I was researching the science behind that, which was pretty cool. And I can only get that in a book. I don't want to read a billion articles about it. I need to read it in a book where it's a little bit more palatable for somebody who doesn't know science that well. And then sometimes just like books gather all those journals, other authors have done the work and put everything together in a way that's just so easy to understand, easy to grasp. And so I do go to the library quite a lot. I love the library. I love researching that way, especially when it comes to nonfiction stuff. I just finished up a nonfiction manuscript and I was in the library pulling different books, different ideas, and I can gather them all together on a desk and go, okay, what's going to help me? What's not going to help me? And I put things aside that don't. I take pictures of the pages that are going to help me so that, if I can't carry home 12 books, then at least I have the information on hand. But yeah, I think those are probably the three biggest types of research. And then, maybe a fourth one, whenever I am writing nonfiction essays or including kind of like a first person element to a nonfiction piece, personal experience. So if I'm able to travel to a place and have my own experience and see how it is for me to travel through that destination, or what it's like for me to go to an art gallery and experience art, or what it's like for me to go to a new city and write about it one day. I like to go and have those personal experiences too.
That's excellent. I wonder when you're doing internet research,
Mhm.
how do you know if you're looking at a credible source or something
Yeah.
kind of sketchy?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a big thing, and it's something that I like to teach students when I teach writing. Well, one, whether or not it's credible, how old is it? If it's, I try to find things within the last 5 years. Granted, there's not always enough research on certain topics, studies being done on certain topics within the last 5 years. Sometimes it's 10 years. So I always look at the date. That's first and foremost. Second of all, I got to look at who the author is. What are their credentials? What are they? How are they an expert? Did they go to college for this? Are they a professor at this university? Are they a journalist with reputable sources? So do they write for like the Washington Post? Have they had any scandal that says, they lied about something? So sometimes you do have to research who the journalist is and their background, whether it's going to their website or going to their social media and kind of getting a sense of like, is this person? And then, I think there's another element that's a little bit difficult to determine unless you do enough research. You can kind of get a feel for it, but why is this being published? So it's not necessarily that the writer or the journalist or whoever it is producing the work necessarily has bad intentions, but sometimes they can be sponsored by somebody who has certain intentions so they'll do a study that produces certain results for their benefit, for them to get, sometimes like government subsidies, or for them to get laws changed. And so that's a good thing to kind of find out, all right, is this, why are they publishing this? Will that skew the results? Does that cause bias? I also like to, look at who's publishing it. So if it's just like a blog, I can't take that as the highest form of reputable source. That is on the lower end. And it's not that it's not reputable. That person might be sharing a personal story that is beneficial to me in my research. However, I'm not going to take them at face value for the facts they present, the statistics they present. I have to go and look and see, where do they find those facts? Where do they find those statistics? People use statistics all the time to change the perspective of a topic. And they don't make it very clear about how those statistics were gathered, or the point of that study, etc. So making sure that I double check the journalist or the writer's work is very important, because that's my name on my piece of writing, and I am going to have pride in that. I'm going to speak the truth as well as I can, or write the truth as well as I can, so that I remain reputable. I remain the best in my career, in my domain. And then also, sometimes, and this is all very hard to kind of convey at times too, because it's just subtle things that I can pick up on my own while I'm researching. But what kind of perspective is the writer coming at the topic from? So for instance, I write about travel and tourism a lot, but travel and tourism is a very colonized industry. And I have to break down, okay, when they say this or they write this, is that a colonialist perspective? Have they worked through those biases? Is that true in a sense? Is this an American writer writing about Nigeria, and not a Nigerian writer writing about Nigeria? And how does that affect what they're writing and what they're conveying? And can I trust that? So breaking down those little bit of elements too.
Yeah. Oh, that's super helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.